What is up? This is Bet the Edge. It's your boy Brad Thomas here with Vaughn and Eric Froton, and it is the National Championship for college football presented by BetMGM. Fellas, we are here. I don't know whether to cry or to clap. The final college football game of the season kicks off in Atlanta, Georgia, Notre Dame versus Ohio State. But before we get into that, we have to talk about what happened in the last two games. Yes, the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl. Reactions to either, both. Go first, Eric Froton.
Yeah, I mean, let's, I guess, start with the Notre Dame-Penn State game. Thrilling right down the very end. Unfortunately, Drew Eller, while trying to ground the ball, did not ground it enough. And unfortunately, that led to an interception, which pretty much gave the game to Notre Dame. A couple of interesting points there. We saw Riley Leonard from a props perspective. 18 rushing attempts. That's the highest he's had all season long. So that's something I certainly was, trying to be aware of. On the other side, not a single Penn State receiver caught a pass in the entire game against that, suffocating man-to-man Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, I mean, both games, thrillers. I mean, Texas, what are you doing? Like, you got the ball on the 1 yard line. Why are you being so cute? And, a fun fact, gentlemen, when I was in high school, I played in a game leading up to a state championship, and we had the ball on the 4 yard line, and we ran a toss play. And the very next play on the 1 yard line, we ran another toss play. And guess what? We turned the ball over. They went 96 yards down the field, and they won the game with 30 seconds left, 29 to be exact. So when I see Texas start doing the same things, and I'm on Texas plus 6.5, I damn near had a heart attack, guys. I'm like, I'm having flashbacks of high school now. So it's just, how do you get to this point in the season and you're not doing the QB sneak, the halfback dive, you're not playing it safe? I don't know, but certainly Texas and Penn State look like they should have been going into overtime, if not winning those games, and they both let the game slip. So, I mean, what instant classics, honestly.
Yeah, and you didn't even have Caleb Downs you were playing against when you were running the tosses.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty embarrassing, though, right? Like I said, and I'm going to stand by this. Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin, right? Like they do all of this great stuff during the regular season, during the games that aren't as important. But when the big games come, the big moments matter, they outcoach themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't care how good Ohio State's red zone defense is. If I'm a coach and I'm the coach of Texas and we're at the 1 yard line, I'm going to tell my boys, you better go get me 1 yard while running it down the teeth of them 3-4 times, or you might not get on that bus, right? Like, how do you get cute in that situation? Because, I did say this, and from a more football perspective in that game, it's important to note that Ohio State, the reason they're so good at goal line defense is because they have athletic guys on the defensive line who can kind of, move and take on those blockers to allow those second level guys to fill the gaps and fill the holes. I mean, if me, little old Brad Thomas sitting here in Orlando, Florida, who's literally watching the game on his couch, knows that and knows that those second level guys are filling those holes that are so wide open that they can crash. How does Steve Sarkisian not know that? Like, he has to know that. That was horrible. Touch on the Orange Bowl game. I was there. Phenomenal game to be at. And I guess I was sitting next to, on the left side, some Penn State fans, little kid. They were crying after the interception. But it was just a testament of Marcus Freeman. Even at that moment when Riley Leonard went down, right? Like, backup comes in, they march down the field and still get points on the board before the half. That was just a great coaching clinic all the way around. James Franklin is another guy where you're like, wow, James Franklin, are you ever going to win the big game? I thought this was his year to at least make it to the national championship, but they fell short.
I'll say this too, Brett. I mean, for Texas, if you don't believe in Quinn Ewers, you should go to Arch Manning there in that situation. If he's the better runner, and you went to him a few times in the college football playoffs on key downs when it came to running the football. So I thought, watching that was a clear sign right there. If you don't trust Quinn Ewers to run it in, Arch Manning's your guy right there. But for Penn State and James Franklin too, Brad, I mean, oh my goodness, this guy, everyone went on social media about the pregame comments about being in the conferences and all that type of stuff, lighting a fire. It really was the last 2-minute drill when their backup quarterback came in and got them a field goal that lit a fire because Jeremiah Love loved the guy's effort in the third quarter, but he took money away out of my pockets. But he's looking healthy, and that right there was Penn State's downfall, letting them get in the game with 2 minutes to go in the first half.
Yeah. I mean, just what are you thinking, right? Like, your quarterback hasn't been spectacular all night. You're playing against an elite pass defense. 30 seconds. It's not like you had a minute and 20 to work with. You just got to. I saw someone say this out, and I thought it was a really good statement. James Franklin emboldened his quarterback to go throw a pick. He empowered him to go throw a pick. He gave him all this confidence, false sense of security. You're not losing. Play for overtime there. But you know what's funny? No, it's funny. Me and Vaughn sit here with our championship winners. We have no opportunity for us to get our prediction correct. Well, Mr. Eric Froton, the world does not remember, has Notre Dame over Ohio State, has both of the representatives. So kudos to you, Mr.
Yeah,
Eric
my pre-playoff projection, believe it or not, on this program was Notre Dame, Ohio State. And while I had Notre Dame beating Ohio State, I do think that is probably in peril right now, given the way the Buckeyes have been just rolling through the playoff.
See, I'm feeling the opposite. I'm holding that 4-1 ticket on the preseason Ohio State. Then I'm looking at the rundown. I'm like, Eric got Notre Dame over Ohio State. Like, I'm cooked. This guy's been on fire all year. There's no way I'm going back to back with Michigan and Ohio State. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be a good game, but yeah, I mean, certainly an 8.5-point spread implicates that Ohio State can run through the competition once again.
And I hedged my bet because I took Notre Dame over Ohio State in the preseason, and that was somewhere around 25-1, I believe, when I laid it. And then after the first round, I took Penn State, Ohio State, with Ohio State going over Penn State as a hedge at 9-1. So, I'm still holding that the big ticket, but the other one, the hedge, went by the wayside. So it doesn't always work the way you want to when you try to play both sides.
Truly.
Well, guys, let's get into it. I already dressed this one up. I'm going to dress it back up again. The National Championship in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta, Georgia. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. The Buckeyes, an 8.5-point favorite. Total set at 46.5. A rematch from last season. We talk about good moments in college football. The Ryan Day game versus Lou Holtz game. Lou Holtz has never seen Notre Dame beat Ohio State. We'll say that. Wow.
You guys were at this game, right? Notre Dame.
Yes,
yes, we were at this game,
Brad.
Rubbing elbows with the Ryan Day friends and family. Yeah,
his
were
best
there.
buddies from college, his UNH buddies, were there. We were hanging out the whole game with those guys, watching them on pins and needles. It was pretty cool. Good dude.
Eric rushed the field and with his hands hands up with the phone, acting like he was one of the players. I was like, wow.
I almost got run over by the Ohio State offensive line, and I have the video to prove it after that 1-yard end of the game touchdown run. We were hoping that we'd get a field storming from the Notre Dame faithful. We're there, we're waiting. Here it is. And that, needless to say, did not happen thanks to 10 men on the field. But Marcus Freeman appears to have learned from that miscue. And, gosh, he's called some pretty great games on the defensive side in this playoff.
Yeah.
I'll let you take it away, Vaughn, because you have a double picks in this, at least from a side perspective. We'll stick with the side and total before we get into the player props.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, you just mentioned, Eric, about Marcus Freeman, especially the defensive effort that Notre Dame has had. I mean, that is their keyest thing in this game, right? We don't expect Notre Dame to go out in this game and light Ohio State up, put up 30, 36 on the scoreboard. So their key to the game is grinding them out, running the ball efficiently. If Riley Leonard isn't a negative game script, we'll get to that later. But I think the first quarter and first half unders are the play. I think 23.5 is a lot for a first half in a national championship. And we just saw Notre Dame, Penn State. That would have been a 10-0 first half, if not for that last drive in the 2 minutes for the Fighting Irish. And Ohio State's been terrific defensively as well. All in the playoffs. We see against Texas, they stood up in the red zone multiple times. I mean, shut down Oregon in the first half. Tennessee didn't sniff a point in the first quarter or third quarter. So we know that this should be a low-scoring game, and the total 46.5 implies that. Now, the reason why I'm not going under on the full game total, now, if Ohio State is up, let's go with a score of 30-17 here. Or I guess it would have to be a little bit higher than that. But what I'm trying to say, if Ohio State's up here by 10 to 14 points and we're right around the total, Notre Dame is still going there trying to score no matter what. So that is the problem with me taking the under 46.5. But I believe the grind, the fill out process here will be real. It'll be chess, not checkers. And that first quarter game script for Ohio State will kind of go by the wayside because they're not going to come out and score 10, 14 points on Notre Dame's defense.
Yeah, and keep in mind with the game that Brad and I had gone to, that was a 17-14 game that came down to the very, very, very end of the contest. It was 14-10 before that last touchdown. Could have ended 14-10. So, that kind of informs that potential underplay where if we get a similar rock fight type scenario like we did. Now, it's different offensive coordinators on both sides. You got Den Brock at Notre Dame. Yep. You have Chip Kelly over there at Ohio State. But the defensive, brain trust is still the same with Knowles and Freeman. So, on that side of the ball, at least there is continuity.
Yeah, and I like your angle too. Like if you look at the Orange Bowl, we talked like that game out of nowhere just went insane, right? Like 0 points in the first quarter and then 31 in the second quarter. I mean, the fourth quarter, like first half feels safer, I guess would be the right way to say it. Like the game, you'll have like a neutral game script unless you get like some crazy action of like special teams or maybe a turnover and to give great field position to the opposition. I went back and forth, right? Like on what I thought was going to happen, right? Like I think it's an under game, right? I think that Ohio State is better. I think that Notre Dame is better than we're giving them credit for. But when I went through and I just looked at my numbers, I had to take Ohio State minus 8.5, and it's around minus 105. Notre Dame, while has had an impeccable season, Marcus Freeman's been a covering beast, covered every game against the spread since their UNI loss, longest active covering streak in college football. They also had some bits of good fortune, right? They didn't have to play in a conference championship. And with that good fortune, they had some misfortune. I don't want to just sell them short. Injuries started to pile up, right? Now they're going to be out without Anthony Knapp in this game. Starting right guard, Rocco might be out as well. And it just kind of adds up and adds up. But the good fortune they had was the side of the bracket they're on, right? They had to play Georgia, but they didn't have to play against a fully functioning offensive attack of Georgia. Played against a Penn State team who, call it what you want, the Penn State team offensively is a one-headed monster. Allard did not have the game he wanted to. Probably his worst game. I think he was out there hanging out on a yacht is what I saw floating around. He was partying on a yacht in Miami. Whatever it was, they had good fortune. They have a bunch of talent, but I just think this Ohio State team is the team of destiny. Not because they've done all of this like life-changing things, but they are that good, right? On paper, just on paper alone. This is a team that's first in EPA margin, both on offense and defense. Great offensive attack with weapons all over the field. They have, I call them the sports cars, the Maseratis, the Ferraris, even the Rolls-Royce luxury car with Carnell Tate, Mecca Buka, and Jeremiah Smith, right? Then they have the two running backs, Sonics and Knuckles, and and Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Offensive line, defensive line, JT Talamalu and Jack Sawyer. Then they have, we haven't got to the secondary, Caleb Downs, All-American. This is a team top to bottom. We didn't even talk about the quarterback. That's just phenomenal. It feels like this is their year. It's felt like that for quite some time. I think the Buckeyes win this game. And, I wanted to talk about a little bit of a narrative. I was at the national championship game when they played against Georgia in the exact same stadium. For people who don't remember, they were owning Georgia for much of that game. Marvin Harrison gets injured, and it changed the semifinal game. Excuse me, it felt like a national championship, right? Because it was they kicked the ball at the New Year's drop, but it felt like that was going to be an Ohio State game, and it changed. Now they get a chance to, rectify that in the same building. I feel like this Ohio State team is going to get the job done. I think they're going to get it done in a big way. we saw what Riley Leonard. I had the similar statement with Penn State and what happens when Riley Leonard gets behind in a game. He shut me up. He played well from behind, but I just don't think Ohio State lets him back in this. I'm going with 8.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to. I mean, it's really hard not to at this point. Ohio State, I mean, I thought Texas was the right side up until, the very end of that game. And, I just thought it was an overinflated spread here. And Notre Dame, give them credit for everything on defense. I mean, I think they can hang in here. 8.5 is a big number, Eric. And, I want to ask you, what's the key here for Notre Dame staying in this game offensively? Like, is Riley Leonard, does he have to efficiently set the standard for the ground game in the first quarter? Or is this a situation where Notre Dame, we have to get a little more uncomfortable and air it out because that worked a little well in the second half against Penn State?
Yeah, I think the key for Notre Dame is to avoid becoming a one-dimensional offense. And the reason why that is because we look at what Ohio State has wanted to do and what they have done against these better opponents since that Michigan game. And it is take away the thing that they are the least efficient at. And you look at Tennessee, their passing offense, 14 of 31 for 104 yards for Nico. They managed to run for over 150, but that didn't matter because they were down 21-0 in the first quarter. Against Oregon, Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator, again, negative 23 rushing yards on 28 carries. It was a complete massacre against them. And then last game against Texas, 58 yards on 2.8 yards per carry to the Longhorns, just said, beat us, Quinn Ewers. We don't think – put the ball out there in harm's way with Caleb Downs roaming the field, and let's see what happens. So if I'm Notre Dame, I want to make sure that I'm establishing both areas of their offense. And if I were looking at them, we know what they do well and what they don't. Their passing attack thrives on efficiency, 66.2% passing completion rate. Okay, there's a 24th they are in passing success rate with 46%, but they don't hit big plays in the pass game. I mean, at all. 131st nationally out of 135 teams in passing explosiveness, with just 11.5% of their completions going for 20 or more yards. I think that's going to be the important aspect of this. I think they'll be able to run the ball with Riley Leonard and the three-headed monster there in the backfield. I think they'll be able to run some creative things. I'm concerned about how the left tackle holds up. If Knapp doesn't play. I mean, that guy got torched by Penn State. Dennis Sutton, he was on the left side almost the entire game because Abdul Carter had his bad shoulder, and they want to make sure they posted him up on the right tackle because that's where he had leverage. He could be able to hide that shoulder a little bit, and it worked out great. Worked out extremely bad for Notre Dame, and with Jack Sawyer, with JTT. On the other side, Tyleik Williams in the middle, like they're going to have to deal with the best front four that there is in all of college football. That's my key if I'm Notre Dame, personally.
Yeah, no, good point. I mean, a left tackle is important of any position in football. And I mean, when you're going up against a front seven and primarily a pass rush like this, I mean, that's going to be a big difference in what Notre Dame can do. And even though Jeremiah Love looked better, he's got time to heal now and probably look better in this game. I do think that Riley Leonard's going to have to throw a lot more than he has in recent games. So,
and that kind of plays to what you were looking at too with that under, right? There's some pretty good data points in your favor, Vaughn. Here's one. Ohio State is 3-6 against the spread when allowing more than 120 rushing yards, right? So that's something obviously they're going to be wanting to try to at least suppress that. I know that Jim Knowles probably has an idea about that. Also, 73% of the Buckeyes games where they are favored by 4 or more points since the 2023 season have gone under. Okay, 73%. The national average is 52%. Okay, when favors by 4 or more, significant. So that shows when they are superior, or at least perceived to be, in a dominant position against teams, they are able to snuff them out and shorten the game and just maul them. So that really does inform your take a little bit. Another kind of on the Notre Dame side, fun stat, they are 20-4 against the spread when rushing for more than 100 yards since 2023. It's the second best mark in the country. The average is a 54% ATS win rate. They're 80% ATS when they're running for more than 100 yards. So that also correlates with Ohio State, as we just mentioned, 3-6 when on more than 120 yards. A couple of interesting data points on against the spread markers right there.
I like that.
You know, Eric, you talk about Notre Dame and their success when they run the ball. They're a team that averages more rush yards than pass yards. Not many teams make it to this level and can say that.
True.
You know, excuse me. This game is really intriguing from a size and stature perspective as well. I thought Ohio State, you know, they had that size and stature matchup where it was two big behemoth teams in the trenches, Texas versus Ohio State. Now they get a little reprieve, right? Playing against a smaller defensive line. I wonder, you know,
with Riley Mills out too, you know, their best run defender. Howard Cross was good last game, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But he was more eating up space. He didn't make any tackles. Didn't cause any pressures, didn't make any you think he made one tackle all last game. So he was kind of more of a plugger.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you this. Do you think that, you know, Chip Kelly's a primary run offensive coordinator, loves to run the ball? Do you think that that's where they lean, right? Like, or do you think they're just going to run their offense and take whatever Notre Dame gives them? It's a tough, stingy pass defense.
No, you make a good point. And then when we're talking about running the ball with Ohio State, it's not like they're actually pretty balanced. Standard downs run rate 57.5% of the time. National average is 58%. They're basically within a percentage point of the average, so that's fairly balanced on passing downs. They run 37% of the time. National average 34%. They're actually a little shaded towards the run in those passing down situations. So even though they're pretty balanced, you know, by what you'd expect a Chip Kelly offense to be, I think they'll be, if they're able to assert themselves on the line, I think they will certainly take it. But this Ohio State offensive line, it didn't, you know, you looked at how Penn State, their blocks, their seals, the way that they were running, like they sung in unison the way that line keyed on Notre Dame. And in that first half, and they were blowing the Irish off the ball, and they kind of went away from it a little bit, if anything. And I think that you'd see, if they have the ability to do it, I think they would. I'm not sure that just the simple, you know, lining up, dual backfield, 12 personnel, and go and run it right up the gut is exactly what they're going to want to do. But, you know, we'll see. That's why they play the games.
Yeah, I think they were like running some 13 personnel in last game too. Ohio State
that was against zone. Like Texas played, they're 116th nationally in terms of man coverage. They play a ton of zone. The exact opposite of what Notre Dame does, where they're almost always in man coverage. So it's like it's two different styles. I wouldn't expect them to have a similar approach as they did against Texas. Two totally different defensive schemes.
Yep. Well, before we get into the player prop aspects of the game, I want to know this Sunday, the Eagles and the Rams look to get one step closer to lifting the Lombardi Trophy. Coverage of the NFC divisional round battle in Philadelphia begins at 2 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. Let's just do a little round robin for the player props. And these are the player props for the national championship. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. Eric, kick things off for your first. Vaughn, you follow, and then I'll go. And we'll just go one by one until we get through them all.
Yeah, well, on the last game that they played, we saw that you and I were on the field, Brad, of course. We saw them use their tight end, Mitchell Evans, way more than they had previously in the season. And that sort of held last game as well. We saw Evans go over 60 yards. In the first game, cut 7 passes for 75 yards. That was in 2023 that we were referencing. And that obviously was the exact same thing that they did with him against Penn State. You know, those leak outs, design sort of shots down the field. He made a great play down the sidelines on a one-on-one shot. So, I mean, I was pretty impressed with what I saw. He's always been good, but they really unveiled him when they had to throw the ball. I think you're going to see him 32.5 receiving yards. I like the over. Again, that's what they did last game against Ohio State. That's what they just did against Penn State. He's in the mid-20s pretty much all over the place. I thought he would go under last game. I learned my lesson. It was the one big mistake I made. I'm going to correct that by going over 32.5 receiving yards for Mitchell Evans in a script that I think they will be throwing in the second half. Are going to have to do anything they possibly can, pull out the kitchen sink in order to try to move the ball through the air in a one-dimensional pass script if they get down. He hits it if they're down.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I actually played Mitchell Evans too. Not to spoil it, but one of my best bets for the show today. I agree. I mean, I just think what we saw at Penn State, we'll see a replication of that. When you look at Georgia and Indiana, it was such a positive game script for Notre Dame to continue running the football from the second half on that Mitchell Evans didn't need to be involved at all in those games. And, USC, Penn State, I think those two are the best representations of what we should see in the Natty with Evans. And I think Riley Leonard, force feeds him. So I went over Evans, didn't get 32.5. I got 33 and 34.5 at the two books that I play. But Riley Leonard universally is 178.5, Brad. And I'm going over that on the passing yards. It's an ugly bet. I mean, all season I talked about I would not take an over on his passing yards, but I think the time is now. 223 last game up against Penn State, 229 is the season high against Stanford. If Notre Dame wants to win this game, Riley Leonard needs to go over that probably in order to win this game, or else Notre Dame's running all over Ohio State, which I don't think any three of us think is going to happen, or most of the viewers or listeners. So, Riley Leonard has to air it out. I'm going over 178.5, and I'm with Eric on Evans over 32.5 and 33.5 receiving yards.
All right, Riley Leonard through the air. Man, wait, Eric, I want to say this since we're talking about Riley Leonard real quick. I was on his rushing attempts over. Even though he finished with 18, it felt like he was never going to get that 11th rush attempt. It was like
the game flipped in their favor because that
flipped and you're like, oh, boom, easy cash, and you had 8 more to spare. They moved his line to 13.5, mega juiced for this game. Mega juiced after having it at 11.5.
It got up to 14.5 yesterday, and
I
took that on the other side down. And then it clicked down to the 13.5. It got hit pretty hard by, I'm sure, the syndicates on that front. Yeah. But that's a lot. I mean, that was the most. Yeah. 18 is the most he had all season. The next closest was 14. So they went and they listed that it's automatically going to be, once again, the most that he's ever done. 13, 14, 15 games, 14 games, because they didn't have a conference championship, and he's 13-1 to the under. Like, what are you supposed to do at that point? And keep in mind, if they don't throw the interception, Drew Eller doesn't throw that interception, or if they go down and they kick the field goal, he goes under. He had 4 rushing. He would go under, the 14.5 as well. He had 4 rushing attempts on that last drive, and one of them was just centering the ball.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that interception is why he cleared the 14.5 line. Otherwise, he goes under.
Yeah.
So even that anomaly, you needed a lot to happen. So, all right, I'm done.
My bet, I went with Travion Henderson. I took him over 53.5 rushing yards. Last week, I thought it was funny how they just set both Katron Allen and Nick Singleton at 60 and said, we're going to set them at 60.5, and you do whatever you want to do with them. And both of the dudes went over their line. I think they did the same thing this week with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I think there's like a yard difference between the two. I think both are perfectly fine plays, but I went with Travion Henderson because he feels like he has more of that burst in him, right? Those long game-breaking runs, 66 yards. If you just go down the list, 66, 29, 39, 29, those are just most recent games, right? This is a Notre Dame team they rank 60th in defensive success rate against the run. This is where you beat them. You run the ball. I think they will get some push with this offensive line against them. Also, the difference why I went between the two, like Travion Henderson has covered this line like 80% of the games he's played in. If you look at the inverse with Quinshon Judkins, it's more like 40. I think it was like 48%, which that's a big difference when you're talking about just a natural hit rate. And man, Travion Henderson, he's got some juice and he looks healthy. I think he gets loose for a run in this game. So, any thoughts to that one, Eric, before you get to your next one?
Yeah, I mean, we know that the formula for Ohio State has been wear him down a little bit, bring in Judkins and smash him in the mouth, hit them between the tackles, grind out those 6-7 yards per run and really establish themselves as being able to get 6 yards whenever they want it. And then they bring in Trevion Henderson and try to hit those outside creases so they can find him a lane. And even if they're not going to do it in the passing game, you saw last game in the receiving game where he caught that end of the first half screen, and it was perfect. It was the first play, of that set of downs, and just so they let the rush come, let them come, hit them, and it was poetry. So you cannot. My only concern with Trevion is just, is he going to get enough carries? Because he could be in single digits. You don't know. He went 17 and for Judkins and 7 for Trevion 2 games ago. Last game, he even though a little bit more. He still didn't get 10 carries. And it's like, he's got to hit the home run is what he has to do. So he does it better than anybody else. And I think they'll be in a position where they will be running the ball in the second half, which would make that possibility certainly there.
Yeah, see Judkins and Henderson both sitting at 11.5 rush attempts pretty much everywhere. So, books are making it kind of hard on you to decide that. Jeremiah Love also at 11.5 rush attempts too. Is that intrigue you guys at all? Something? Are we staying away from Jeremiah Love this week?
Man, they wanted to pound the rock with him. For someone who was banged up, they wanted to run the ball.
I mean, that 3 minute spurt in the third quarter was ridiculous.
It was like, oh my God.
Yeah. The entire third quarter. Like, he came out in the third quarter. He said, we haven't run the ball at all. We are going to run it down Penn State's throat. And that's exactly what they did. 7 of their 8 plays of that opening drive were runs. It was either Leonard or it was Love, and they went right up the gut on him. I don't know if that's, we'll talk about it, but that's what happened.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm squeamish on the Love props this week, but honestly, I just added it to the best bet section because the more I keep thinking about this play and the more I want to talk about this play with you guys, I keep starting to fall in love with it. But again, why are we not betting Will Howard rush yards under? The last 2 games, it was clear smackers for us. I think this is best bet potential here for the Natty too. There's not many design runs for the guy. He did have a long of 18 last game, and he finished with 4 rushing yards.
Dude, if he didn't trip on that run that went for 18 yards, it was a touchdown, and it was an over, and we got
easily. Yeah, but he did trip because the gods didn't want him to go over, did they? Right. But he's also going to be under pressure. Yeah, we talk about if Ohio State has the lead, he'll have a positive game script. They'll give the ball to Henderson, Judkins, yada, yada. But if it is a game neck and neck here, he's going to be jumping back to pass. And I do think Notre Dame's pass rush and Marcus Freeman's crew can come up with enough design blitzes to create pressure on Will Howard. So, he's taken 2 sacks last week. That was the second most on the entire season. Penn State got him 3 times, but he had 12 rush attempts in that game. We won't see a number nearly that high here. So with 12 rush attempts and 2 sacks taken and 1 total yard in the last 2 games, I'm going to go back under on Will Howard and hope that Notre Dame defense comes to play.
Yeah, gosh, well, hopefully we get some sacks on that. And I'm actually going to go with the Jeremiah Love angle and follow that down the rabbit hole that I've chased. As you mentioned, that third quarter, they didn't run them very much at all in that first half. You had the Stephen and Jelly drive to end the first half that got them the first score of the entire game. It was 10-3 going into the break. But then when they came out, as you mentioned, it was those next 2 drives for Notre Dame. It was run the ball, period. And then hit Jaden Greathouse on a 54-yarder. So with what I'm looking at with Love, I took him under 48.5 rushing yards early in the week. That's down. And that's, I wanted to get as good a line as I possibly could on that for that under. I'm still, as you said, I'm a little nervous about it based on volume. But what I am taking and what I am recommending is he is at 8.5 rushing yards in the first quarter. And I think what we're going to see is that third quarter drive that they did against Penn State. That's going to inform how they kind of go after Ohio State off the jump. Hopefully they win the coin toss. If they win the coin toss, I feel like this is in the books. I think they're going to go out and you're going to get a couple of carries, at least 4 carries you probably see out of Love, given the fact that You'll get 2 possessions in that first quarter, possibly at least a half of one. I think you see that happen at 8.5 rushing yards, where you probably get 4, maybe 5 carries, which he got against Georgia. That's the approach they took against them, was to go and hit them hard early. That's the sort of a script that we saw with Adric Estimes last year in 2023, where they wanted to get out and run the ball early. I think you'll see that as well. I like the over 8.5 rushing yards for Jeremiah Love, even though I'm not particularly bullish on his complete game over due to the knee.
We're doing a same game parlay for the Natty, so I just added that to the same game Natty. Eric, is that okay with you? That is exactly how we should be kicking our game off. I love that.
Hopefully we get with a win. That would be a tough loss right out of the gate. But hey, that's why we bet.
I went a little into the rabbit hole here.
I like it.
I don't know why I did this, but like I was just becoming a sick individual. I've been sick. I think that's why. Like when you're sick, you have more times like laying down, like you're just going and looking at the most random data. And I went with Anais Williams here, and running back for Notre Dame. I took them both ways. I put a half unit on both. I took over 2.5 receptions, and I took over 17.5 receiving yards. That's not as widely available. I've only seen one location you can get that. 24
Dude,
and a half.
That's torch. 17.5 is gone.
It's gone. Okay.
Gone.
I did.
That was the open.
17.5. Yeah, I got that. I got that earlier this morning. I figured
you got it this morning. I didn't see that yesterday. I was looking. Where did you get it?
I got it on Fliff. I don't know if you played
Fliff.
there.
That's what it is. Okay, you sent your roses and your coins to Fliff.
Yeah. I'm a coin collector.
You love roses. You're romantic, right?
But yeah, I'm gonna track 24.5 since not everyone can play there. But I mean, this dude, when I think Notre Dame has been searching for something, right? And a spark, a guy to step up. First, it was first we'll talk about the wide receivers. Now we have out of the backfield. This dude is on the field for one reason only, playing about 20 snaps per game. That's to catch passes. 4+ targets in the last 3 games. He had 5 receptions against Penn State for 66 yards, only 2 against Georgia, but still saw 4 targets, 15 yards against Indiana, 4 receptions, 4 targets. His receptions number is plus money. It's like plus 150 for 2.5 receptions. When you saw the last 2 games Ohio State played, especially in a positive script, they allowed a ton of receptions to the running backs, right? And that's really what happens when teams blitz a lot. Let's just call that like the best way to neutralize a bitch. Best way to neutralize a blitz is to throw the ball to your running back, throw to the flats, get the ball out quick. Wisner and Blue combined for 11 receptions. James of Oregon and Whittington combined for 8 against the Buckeyes. This dude, ton of chops, right? I don't look at high school stats too much, but 177 receptions, over 3,200 yards receiving in high school. Thought he was a good flyer play, especially like a lot of the lines I looked at were so juiced. Like they were crushed. And like by the time I started doing my research, I was like, wow, I'm way behind on the 8 ball. Let me get into the weeds here and see if I can find somebody with a little pop at some good numbers.
Yep. Kyle Francis put that out yesterday at 21.5 even, and that even steamed it up more.
Wow.
My boy, the franchise. So, that's where we're going. It looks like if there's a line right now that has steam, that's the line. I'm going with Jaden Greathouse. Okay. And we saw him rode hard, put away wet last game, 7 catches, 105 yards. Even though I don't know exactly how much of a volume, he's going to get, I don't think he's going to probably get 7 catches once again, as he did last game. It would be nice, but I mean, that's not really realistic. If we do look at Notre Dame though, what do they like to do? Overwhelmingly, the number one thing they do in the passing game is throw to the slot receiver. 42.5% of their completions this year have gone to the slot receiver. The national average is 35%. All right. So in terms of prolific slot passing teams, they rank 16th overall nationally. When it comes to the outside receivers, 34.5%, 91st. And you go and throw in the fact that Bo Collins was hurt last game, has a calf injury. As somebody who plays basketball and has had some calf injuries in his day, those are naggers. So with Jaden Greathouse currently listed at 13.5 yards for his long reception, he has beat that 7 out of his last 11 games. 13.5. Gosh, he had a 54-yarder last game against 7 receptions. I think you're just asking for it. That is not a big ask for considering he's the full-time slot receiver, ran 33 routes. The only person who ran more was 34 for Mitchell Evans last game. It was Greathouse, and it was Evans last game. And if he gets 3 receptions, one of them's going for more than 13.5 yards on that long reception, I'm in. Taking the over 13.5 long.
Love that. That's definitely a fun play, too. Did you guys get involved in the touchdown market at all?
Touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
I hate the touchdown market with Ohio State unless Jeremiah Smith taking 2, because literally I feel like you can bet anybody on that offense and you can hit anybody. You probably will hit anybody.
I took a gander at it, and like for long shot stuff, I was looking at Eli Raridan at 35-1. I want to say he actually got a seam touchdown. He would have caught a touchdown last game because he beat I forget which linebacker it was. He beat a Penn State linebacker up the seam out of an inline alignment and broke it off sort of like towards the corner. Drew a pass interference penalty because the guy grabbed him on the way. If he doesn't get interfered with and the guy doesn't basically tackle him before he gets it, it was a no doubter touchdown. So like for a long shot, I could see maybe Raridan gets down there at 35-1, but it's not something that I'm really I'm going crazy about because I don't know how much Notre Dame's going to score.
Yeah, I was looking at Ohio State in the touchdown market. I didn't really trust Notre Dame outside like Riley Leonard, to be honest, but that's a fun one.
Ohio State guys. And Riley Leonard was okay. He was like 1.5-1, right around like plus 140.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, he got in the last game, and we kind of prefaced like that's probably the only Notre Dame player that we'd be willing to take a touchdown bet on in that game. But I will say the longer shots that I looked at were the defenses to score here, but those were 8-1 odds, 9-1 odds. I'll say be careful though, because this one's hard to say. This one's hard to get off my chest, man. No, I was live betting, and I saw a defense, Ohio State's defense, or excuse me, Texas defense to score a touchdown against Arizona State at 11-1 odds. Thought that's good. I could probably take that with the game script this is going. I don't trust Arizona State's quarterback Levitt, so I played that. They returned the punt for a touchdown in the first quarter. I'm ecstatic, thinking I just won a couple $100 extra. And I go to my book, and it says defense and FanDuel. It was FanDuel, so I'm gonna hate on FanDuel right now. They're the only book that doesn't offer special teams touchdowns. Yeah. Normally, everyone combines the defense and special teams. So be careful when you're placing those bets, because when I realized the only book I bet that doesn't allow special teams touchdowns, I was
charlatans.
Mad. Yeah.
That should be banned.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, that's not okay. But that is something I wanted to preface. Like, take a look at that. I took a look at the defenses for a little sprinkle. But I have 2 touchdown bets I'll talk about for the best bet section. But I just want to get your guys' take.
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, if you can get special teams, Notre Dame had a special teams touchdown, right, in the playoff. We saw them take a kickback. We just saw Jack Sawyer run all the way for a defensive touchdown by Ohio State. So, like, we've seen it happen. Just make sure you're getting your special teams.
Yeah.
Don't take one without special teams. You need it.
Literally.
I feel like I've been trying to figure out like which of the 2 running backs to score, right? Like Trevion or Judkins. And it's always the opposite. And like, I haven't found a correlation of when they give which running back the ball in the red zone, right? And I'm just like, well, that's not Judkins, or well, that's not Trevion. It's the other one, and they score. So I stayed far away from those guys.
Yeah, it's not like betting on the Detroit Lions running back duo when Gibbs and Montgomery were healthy, Brad. where it's just a cash cow every single week. But yeah, no, I'm with you here. Is it time for ladder plays? We got the last ladder of the season.
Eric, did you get out all your plays already?
Yeah, I'll get my other stuff in. I have some Ohio State plays. I'd start out with Notre Dame. We'll just rip through them real quick. Emeka Egbuka, 4.5 receptions. It's not even heavily juiced to the over or anything. I think we're getting an overcorrection based on last game. Now, as I sort of alluded to in the jump, Texas plays almost exclusively zone coverage. That is not what Ohio State will be facing this week. Notre Dame is the most prolific man-to-man coverage team in the entire country. 135 FBS teams, numero uno, 63.7% of the time they are playing man coverage. The national average, 36.6% man-to-man coverage. This is what they do. Obviously, they can dip in the zone bag, but that's not what they want to do. They want to take Jordan Clark. They want to take Leonard Moore, and they want to have name escapes me there, the number one cornerback. They want to have all of them singled up on these wideouts with a single high, probably shaded over to the hash on Jeremiah Smith's side. That informs a different sort of an approach to how we're looking at these Ohio State props. I think even though Egbuka, Smith, they didn't do anything last game, Emeka Egbuka at 4.5 receptions is a major buying opportunity. Last game, again, we'll dip back, different coordinators, but dude, they ran Book on those drags and those rub routes, with the man-to-man coverage all game in 2023. Brad and I watched it, in person, had 95 yards, 7 of 7 receptions. He ripped them. And that was with, Morrison's out there. He was on the field. Everybody was there. Obviously you have they're in the national title game. They still don't have the number one corner. I think you're going to see Egbuka, similar type of thing. Going to get him on those drags. 4.5 receptions. I'm in. I'm in on that over. He is going to be road hard and put away wet. Trevion Henderson on the other side. We saw him catch that 75-yarder at the end of the first half. I'm just going on the under here. He's at 2.5 receptions, and it's pretty balanced in terms of the odds. All right, let me see the 3 receptions. I think they need to be in a position where they're sweating it to do that. They didn't even have to do it against Texas. Sure, they'll throw him some passes. Hey, they'll give him some dump offs. Trevion's explosive. I get it. But you got to catch 3 passes in a game where they could be in really good shape and they just don't need to. I'm taking that speculative under. We're getting wild, of course. And then lastly, on the other side with Ohio State, it took Greathouse over 13.5 long reception. As we discussed, we're going to have Jeremiah Smith singled up. If you're going to single up Jeremiah Smith, you're going to see some shots. You're going to see some shots that we just didn't see, where you only got 3 looks, 3 targets, and we only caught 1, and that was just a little out pattern. Against Texas, there will be no bracketing. You're going to have some opportunities, and we're going to see some shots to Jeremiah Smith tonight. In that game. 29.5 yards is his longest reception. Oh, man. Give me the own. We're gambling. It's the national title game.
Yeah,
let's roll.
It's funny. I was gonna play this bet, and only because it's the national championship, and they're gonna take some shots indoors, right? Jeremiah Smith, 100+ receiving yards is 1,000 to 1.
Whoa, where is this?
Wait, what?
On DK. Not 1,000 to 1, 11 to 1. Excuse me.
Yeah.
My brain's not functioning. My brain is not functioning. I'm telling you, I've been sick for the last 3 days, man.
It's going around, man. So it's going around. Me too.
Yeah, listen, I broke the fever. Wait, this is totally unrelated, right? But you know what the softest word in the world is that makes you feel like less of a man when you say it? Is fever. I told someone I had a fever, and I was like, man, I should have just freaking, grabbed my purse or something after I was done saying it. Do I need my bottle while I'm at it? I broke my fever. Pass me my bottle too, my binky. But
I got a fever too, and my only prescription is more player props.
More player props. What about ladders? What about ladders?
Climb the
give
ladders.
Me some ladders, baby.
All right, my ladders. We're gonna go with, and we had talked about in a little bit. Jaden Greathouse. He's pretty again. He went 7 for 7 for 105 last game on DK. 50+ receiving yards is plus 425. You're going to get almost 4.5 to 1 on our money for that. Look, I know he's down. He's pretty low at that. He's at 22, 23 and a half or so is where he's listed, because that's actually smart by the books. I'm not going to knock him on that, because they didn't let the outlier sort of sway them. But by the same token, if I'm looking at what I want to play here, we're expecting a pass script. We're expecting them to be behind. We're expecting them to have to try to make something happen somewhat through the air. That pressure is good for this sort of a thing. At 50 yards, 4-1, I would rather take that than just simply take his receiving over and say, all right, maybe you catch the one and he goes, and then we're getting 4.5 to 1. I just think that's just too much value for what we're getting out of there. And again, we know that they throw to the slot a disproportionate amount of times. And then on the other side, while I'm iffy on the overall, again, rushing yards over for Riley Leonard, we've seen that opposing quarterbacks, rushing-oriented quarterbacks, have done pretty well on Ohio State. They tend to key on the running backs and sort of say, all right, what are you going to get? You're going to get, if you can bop something outside of structure, or you're rolling, all right, we'll live with that. If you're going to do the up the middle, quick QB draw, all right, we'll accept that. But we're going to take one aspect away. If they decide to take away, as certainly potential, they're going to take one aspect away. If they take away that passing game, well, then that's all Notre Dame has is Riley Leonard with those designed runs and sort of you try to hide what you're doing and use subterfuge, so to speak. But that's the only way I see them really doing much on the ground if they're shut down. He's at 70 plus rushing yards, is plus 400. The sacks concern me here, but if I'm swinging for the fences, it's the national title game. Sprinkle on plus 400 over 70 plus rushing yards on Riley Leonard.
Feels like it's Riley Leonard's lowest rushing yardage prop since the beginning.
Pretty low at that mid-30s. Yeah, right now. Sure. Mid-30s is pretty reasonable.
That's kind of why I went over on the passing for my ladder, because I saw that and was like, maybe they think either they're taking the rushing away, maybe he's going to be getting sacked. I mean, not totally sure, but I agree with Eric. There's going to be one thing taken away, and Riley Leonard's probably going to excel in the other direction. So while I'm playing Eric's rushing yards, I'm also playing my passing yards props for Riley Leonard, because he's going to probably cash one of the ladders, if it's in my opinion. But plus 225 yards is plus 240. 275 is plus 700, which is climbing the ladder all the way for Riley Leonard. Something he hasn't done all season. But I felt like those were two areas that I wanted to play because his rushing yards was so low. I felt like Riley Leonard's going to have to air it out. And while I like Greathouse, I went with Mitchell Evans. I mean, he's now has 2 games over 50 yards on the season, so you could play the 50-plus yard to make it, his third and the biggest game of the season. But I went 60-plus for him to have a season high. I think him and Greathouse are the two top options in this passing attack, obviously. So I would get down with either of those two. But Evans was plus 350 to have a season high 60-plus receiving yards. So I like that deal. So those are my two ladders: Riley passing yards and Evan receiving yards.
I'm on Quinshon Judkins, 100-plus rushing yards. I think both of these running backs go over their 50, whatever it's at now, 55, 60 rushing mark. And it's just whoever gets the volume or that one breakaway. And I'm going to go with Judkins over Travion just because I don't want to double dip, right? Sure, if Travion goes over, but what if Judkins gets the 100 and Travion goes under? I'm still making some money here. I'm from round the way. I'm leaving here with something. Quote Denzel, Mr. Washington there.
Love that.
Before we get into, I didn't even give a people's parlay pick, but before we get into it, I have to let you know, you need to watch the biggest name in sports talk, including Mike Fliero, Dan Patrick, Dan Lebitard, and Matthew Berry as they cover the biggest moments on and off the field each weekday on NBC Sports Now channel. It is now available on Peacock and free on most streaming platforms. Learn more at nbcsports.com/now.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See betmgm.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
The People's Parlay. You know, this shows you that parlays are the devil, right? We started off, I think we were 2-0, right, in parlays, and it's dwindled down since.
Don't say it.
It's dwindled down since 2-16. But listen, this is why they give you the bonus bets, right? The more people, the more same game parlays you play, the more times they invite you to the casinos. You know, the ones that are tied with the casino, they're like, "Hey, room's on us." You know, it's the way they say that the straights pay the bills. The lottos are for fun, or the straights pay for the lottos. Some saying like that.
Yeah,
Eric, first leg, hit us.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the previously mentioned Jeremiah Love over 8.5 first quarter rushing yards. I think that if we're doing the parlay and we want to get something out of the way real quick, this is an informed decision where Notre Dame is going to have to establish themselves in some way, shape, or form on the ground to keep the dogs off of Riley Leonard. 8.5 rushing yards. I'll take the over in that first quarter.
Yes, love it. I'm going Mitchell Evans over 33.5 receiving yards and Will Howard under 11.5 rushing yards. Getting sweaty for those two. Like we said, Notre Dame's going to be at a script where they'll have to feed Greathouse or Evans more than likely. And if Ohio State does cover, they win. We could also get those Will Howard kneel downs guys that we didn't mention. That'll come in handy too. So
team kneel downs. Don't worry.
Team kneel down.
Yeah,
They don't give us the Will Howard.
That's what they do now.
Yeah,
wow, I didn't know that. I learned something.
Trust me on that. I know that.
Oh,
I've had some people reach out and they're like,
"How's the team kneeling down?"
I'm like, "Oh, it won. You're rushing over one despite the needs because it's a team stat."
I got
that is
screwed on a team.
I've never been like that's never messed with me in college football yet. So that is something that I just learned. I'm shocked.
I had Brendan Sorsby, QB for Cincinnati, under his rushing yards, and he had a snap that got snapped over his head in shotgun. He runs back, grabs it 20 yards behind, picks up the ball, runs a few yards to try to do something with it, to pick it, and then he just, sort of gets tackled. They called it a team rush, and I ended up losing the under bet. Disgusting. Disgusting.
Brutal.
That cannot be considered a team rush, but
no,
here we are.
Cannot.
So the point is, they'll get you. They'll get you on the team rush.
They just want to make it convenient for them, They want to make it convenient for them. I went with Ohio State money line. Nothing sexy for my People's Parlay. Let's get into our best bets, and then let's talk to our next section. I want to move this along a little bit. So my best bet, I'll do mine since it's kind of the same thing. Ohio State money line, but I parlayed them with Detroit Lions in the NFL there. Just two teams that I just think are the better teams on the field. Pays out -180.
I am going with my best bet. Beaux Collins, Beaux, Boots Collins. He has a calf strain. I alluded to earlier in the show about how I have had one before, and they're horrible. He played last game against Penn State exactly 3 snaps. He got on the field, and that was it. He got off the field, done. Congrats on your under. He's going to try to play again, supposedly this week. Who knows what we get out of him? Okay? We have no idea. The previous game against Georgia, when he got hurt, he played 23 receiving snaps. He caught 1 pass for 13 yards, period. Previous one against Indiana, 2 for 18. Against USC, 1 target, caught 0 of them. Okay, so 3 of the last 4 important pass-oriented games, especially USC. They were passing the ball plenty on that. He has cleared it 1 time, and that was against Indiana. And he didn't clear it until the last 2 games when he was injured against Georgia and then barely suited up against Penn State. I can't even believe we're getting this line on Bo Collins. You have to take the under and just say, great, let the chips fall where they may. Maybe he catches a deep pass, but where he's already compromised and played 3 snaps last game. That's an easy one. Under.
Yeah. I love that. I went with Mitchell Evans and Will Howard. The over 34.5, 33.5 receiving yards for Evans and Will Howard under 11.5 rushing yards is my 2 best player prop best bets. No need to continue to beat those horses. But I like I would split a bet, Brad, and we talked about this a little earlier, on Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, whatever your unit size is. I think both those guys score a touchdown. If you can get a book that's offering you, anything close to plus 100 on either side, minus 105, plus 105, I think that's a good bet because they'll likely – one of the two, if not both of them, will score. But we've seen the college football playoff, which is something I'd like a sprinkle of too. Both running backs have scored at least 2 touchdowns in 2 out of 3 games. So, you can sprinkle for that 5 or 6 to 1 odds on either guy to score 2 touchdowns and just pass on the anytime of minus 105 to minus 130. But that's my perception on the touchdown market. But I like Evans and Howard as my 2 best bets, and I'd split Judkins and Henderson down the middle.
I like that. Man, so we should put a bow on this game and at least look towards next year. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for a fantastic year. It was fun. It was amazing. And I can't thank you guys enough. My 2 homies, my 2 brothers, but also thanks to the fans, guys.
Yeah, no, it's been a phenomenal year all year. And certainly even at points where it's been a frustrating for me as a bettor personally. I mean, I've enjoyed every aspect of the show as always. And I mean, telling your guys' bet has certainly made up for my lack of miscues early in the season. So thank you guys for all your hard work and dedication to make me and everyone else money on the show too.
Of course, my brother. Of course. And I will say, obviously, thank you to everybody. And I am remiss if I don't mention that on this show 1 year ago for the national championship, I put forth the most accurate college football national title game projection of all time. Michigan to win with 11-0 on the college football player props in that game. A magical moment indeed. While I don't have any delusions about popping an 11-0, for this game, just remember, we're coming. And we're going to make your wallets fat.
Yes. I'm so excited. I'm normally just going to, I see the national championship and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to tell Eric, right? I'll just tell Eric because that's where the money's to be made in the national championship. But where I also told Eric, I ended my own personal run of picking Heismans only to tail the biggest college football brain there is and still cash another Heisman ticket. And then I got talking about it because it's
that's right.
Amazing.
Exactly. This is like my show here. Oh, let's talk about the national championship. Oh, you want to talk about the Heisman and my 75 and 100 to 1 Travis Hunter tickets that I won? Let's talk about that too.
Let's get into just quick next year. Just give me 1 or 2, 3 Heisman that you're looking at. Arch Manning's the short shot at plus 500, DJ Lagway plus 900, and then Mateer at 900 and Beck at 10 to 1. Anybody catch your eye there, Eric?
I'm looking a little bit longer odds. I don't like the fashionable odds in the Heisman. I kind of like to take some shots. I'll tell you what I've done already that has moved the most significantly. Ryan Williams opened at 75 to 1. Check. Now down to 25 to 1. You've seen a massive swing on that. Also, Jeremiah Smith opened 25 to 1. Now is down 12 to 1. So again, just like last year with Travis Hunter, that didn't last long. Same thing with Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith. Incredible. Both of them. You've seen Ryan Williams go down 300%. And Jeremiah Smith drop by 50%. If I had to go with a couple others, Garrett Nussmeier, 14 to 1. I think you're going to see LSU gas it up. I'm looking at these experienced veteran quarterbacks. Sam Leavitt, we saw what he did over there with Arizona State. I thought he was phenomenal against Texas. 22 to 1. Great. I'll take a shot on him. And then last, probably the best one at the odds right now, Lenora Sellers at 16 to 1. I think you can get some serious steam. He was electric, both running the ball, throwing the ball, beating Clemson at the end of the year for South Carolina. He is going to have a hell of a year next year, and at 16-1, it's worth a sprinkle.
I went with my short guy went with Klubnik, K. Klubnik. Dude threw for 3,600 yards. He gets his 2 beast wide receivers back because one's a freaking sophomore, the other was a freshman, right? Like that helps out a ton. They play a really good offense. Now they bring in what's his name, Dennis Allen on defense, so they should be better defensively. I mean, if this team's in the national championship conversation, if he has a similar year, he threw like 36 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, right? Like he had the numbers of a really fantastic quarterback. I also thought one that was really interesting was Austin Simons there from Ole Miss. I thought he was pretty interesting at 80-1 for an unknown commodity, right? Just the offense is going to be good. I thought the number is not going to be anywhere near that as the time comes. And Dante Moore, that offense is always going to have Heisman candidates every year. Just the offense they play, and when you get Evan Stewart coming back, it's pretty big. I think maybe Mike Benson can be better in a change of scenario, kind of do like what a Trayshawn Holden did, where it went from Bama to Oregon. Benson went from Bama to LSU to Oregon, needed a massive change of scenery there.
Yeah, no, I like that pick too. I kind of went the route of chalk, to be honest with you guys. I like Arch Manning. I mean,
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, I mean, why? Because I played it in Colorado earlier and I talked about it. Is that why?
Yeah. You have to bet him every year until he wins it.
Yeah, I mean, if he wins it, he might not. But at the same time, I think people in the NIL era are going to want to come in and play with Arch Manning. But at 5-1, I think those odds will shorten up in the offseason. Over the next 2, 3, 4 months, we'll start seeing the 4-1s, 350s, 3-1. So that's kind of why I want to get it. But I do like the shout out to the receivers too. I noticed the line movement for both of them, Jeremiah Smith being the other, down to 12-1. If I was picking someone else that's not as chalky, I would go Garrett Nussmeier as well, Eric at 14-1. I played him this year at 18-1, so certainly would have to run it back and assume he has another big year through the air.
Sure.
Yeah, well, let's just do national championship real quick. I don't have any super strong convictions of a winner. There's so many question marks at the very top. Vaughn's going with Texas. Texas has to replace a lot. Even
that's money. There's money everywhere nowadays.
Even in the dynasties of the Alabamas, right? We'll talk about the latest one, right? Even when Alabama lost a lot, they never were right back in the national championship. They always had that one buffer period. Texas even lost guys who were going to be like day 2 picks, right? If you look, basically they lost 3 wide receivers. They're losing offensive linemen, defensive tackles. I just feel like that's so much. Their quarterback, even though Arch Manning's really good, it's just so much for 6-1. Not saying they can't win. Yeah. I'm going Clemson, 18-1. Return a ton. Dabo, you want to talk about a guy in the portal? He went from 0 to 100, and that's all Dabo does. He's only 0 or he's only 100. He is the portal king now. Yeah, I'm going with Clemson to the national championship.
Portal king Dabo Swinney. Okay, come on now, Brett.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It's all right. Hey, he's in it though. He wants to win. I like Clemson at 18-1. I like LSU at 23-1. I know obviously their defense is taking a beating, especially during Jaden Daniels' season 23. They couldn't stop anybody. It was a shame with that incredible offense they had. But this year, bringing in Missouri DC, Brad Baker, you saw them as the season went on, get a little better, get better. We know they're going to hit the portal. We know they're going to bring in talent. We already have security on the offensive side. We know we got Nussmeier, which is great. You got Caleb Durham as well, who is going to be – you're going to hear a lot about Caleb Durham over the course of next year in LSU. I think their offense could be as good as anybody in the country. And with Brad Baker, the defensive coordinator, guy was incredible at Missouri. Year 2 of him having the personnel he wants in place to be able to put things together, I think that at 23-1, that's an excellent shot.
I'll have to add one more thing. I thought Alabama's price was really funny. I'm not betting
I knew you were going to say
it's too high at 14-1.
What?
Too high.
It should
I don't
be
trust them.
Yeah,
you can't trust them. It felt like it was a safe price. Like a book just place it not too low where they're like just get hammered from everyone else, and not too high where they're like people are just betting on them. You can't trust them offensively. You don't know what Ty Simpson is, right? There's a reason. There's a reason why. There's a reason why Ty Simpson hasn't played yet. They did bring a lot back defensively, which was I have no idea how. But Let me see. Are there any other prices on the board?
I don't think any of these prices are really appealing, man. Like,
No, I don't think so either. I think there's a lot of wait and see.
Like, who's getting down Ole Miss 20-1 right now, or Michigan 35-1, A&M?
I'm not putting a penny on
no
Ole
way,
Miss. I will bet on Ole Miss for the next 5 years, maybe next 10. Give me odds on them not to win a championship in the next 10 years. I will bet that.
Yeah, -110. Yeah, I'll take the Longhorns. I'll double down on Arch Manning in Texas. Try and go back to back to back, depending what happens with Ohio State. But even no matter what happens with Notre Dame here, I don't want them at 14-1 either to win the Natty next year. But yeah.
That said, let's wrap here, boys. As I said, this was fun. Again, another thank you from me, Eric Froton, and Vaughn Delzell. This is Bet the Edge of college football takeover. Take care.